We're live. Tony back again with another live tonight. It's gonna be a special one. It's gonna be a first live in English, so I guess we'll jump from French to English from time to time. But as you know, we're a network in Canada, so we're bilingual over here. So today it's gonna be the first of many, hopefully. And we're gonna start with Michaella, who's gonna join us. She's gonna tell us about her career path, her story. She has a great project going on with the Fadi Studio as well, so she'll give us some insight on this topic. So again, don't hesitate if you have any questions. My goal, again, the purpose of these lives is to, give a spot for the people in our communities. We have people everywhere in all kinds of areas. So we want to give them, an opportunity to present us like their journey, their experiences, their challenges, and maybe some of us will be inspired. A lot of us are again in different domains, so it's great to have support from someone in the network. So I'll invite Michaela in so we can start. So let's see if I can get you in the live. Hey,
Hi,
can you hear me well?
how are you?
1 2 1 2 test. Can you hear
I
me?
can hear you. Can you
Awesome.
hear me?
Awesome. I can hear you very well.
Awesome. I'm excited.
How are you?
I'm doing well. And you?
Good. Are you having a nice week?
Yeah,
Nice day?
it's been good. It's been busy,
Yeah?
but it's good. I'm glad it's going well. No complaints.
Yeah, and tomorrow's Friday, so even better, I
Exactly.
guess.
I was thinking that. I was like,
Yes,
GIF. Yeah.
yes. Awesome. And well, first off, thank you very much. I really appreciate that you take the time to come and talk with us. So
Yeah.
I was just telling again, so it's our first English live, but obviously we'll go from French to English
Yeah.
accordingly if need be. But again, we're a bilingual network, so it's
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that everyone is fine with that. So yeah, first and foremost, thank you for your time. And if you could just start with just presenting yourself, who you are, what you're doing.
Okay. Yeah. So Michaela Mutoni Dorvlo. I live in Ottawa. I am obviously Rwandan. Though to be honest, I left Rwanda in like 2002, and I
Wow.
was 12 years old. Yeah, so it's been a long time. So it's been more than so. I've spent more of my life outside of Rwanda than in Rwanda, which
Okay.
is
In Canada
interesting.
only or?
No,
Okay.
I was born in Burundi,
Okay.
and then we lived in Swaziland for a year in '94,
Okay.
and then in '95 we moved to Rwanda, and then 2002 we moved to Germany, and then 2006 Senegal, and then I came to Canada in 2008 for college.
Nice.
And then so I've been in Canada and the US since then. Like so I did Montreal, Toronto, New York, Montreal, and now I'm in Ottawa.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So all of these travels for studying or for your career, I
Yeah,
guess, when you started your
exactly.
career?
Yeah,
Okay.
so first I was with the parents.
Okay.
We were moving with my parents, right? And then after that, it was because I was studying, or I was like, so I first studied at McGill when I came here.
Okay.
And then I moved to Toronto because I was working. So not my first job, but my first corporate job was at Target. I was doing inventory management at Target, and I had the stores in Quebec.
Wow.
So if you ever went to Target, we always had inventory issues.
Yeah.
So it was a real school of work. Like I was working like I was a management consultant. We were working all the time. And then I was like, what is my life? I'm 22. Why am I working 80 hours a week,
That's crazy. Yeah.
And I'm not paid like it.
Yeah.
So I was
Imagine.
like, okay, let me do something else in my life,
Hmm.
And typical African child, I was like, okay, let me go do my master's. So
Mm. Okay, so you left the job and you went back to school, or
yeah,
you do the
exactly.
same? Okay, okay,
Yeah, so that's why
okay,
I moved to New York.
okay.
I went and did my MBA at NYU.
Mm.
And I wanted to go to New York because I thought I would work in nonprofit. I thought I would either work for the United Nations or I would work with any of the foundations like the Clinton Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, those type of things. So I was like, in New York, like that's the place to be if I want to do that type of work, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So then I tried, I interned at the Clinton Foundation.
Okay.
It was really cool. I actually met Bill Clinton because he would meet the class of,
Wow.
he would come and meet the class of interns,
Mm-hmm.
So I met him. We have a picture somewhere. And I remember I was telling my dad, like, oh my God, I met Bill Clinton, like I was so impressed. And my
That,
dad is like, so he's a normal person like you? And I'm like,
mm,
okay, I know what you mean. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, of course he's a normal person, but I was still like, it's Bill Clinton.
yeah, for sure. For this generation, it's a big, it's a
Yeah,
monument. Yeah. So,
exactly.
and during this internship, what were you doing for the foundation?
So it's interesting because I did an MBA, right? So I was
Mm-hmm.
always, I believe in business as
Okay.
a way to implement change. So because I have a problem with nonprofits in general, like with the whole concept of always fundraising for money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting because at the Clinton Foundation, they had like a small arm within the Clinton Foundation that worked on social businesses, like social enterprises.
Okay. Okay.
And that's where I interned. So it was really cool. Like it was actually a partnership. It was called Clinton Giustra because Giustra is like this Canadian actually like billionaire who partnered with the Clintons to create this initiative. And they were starting, so they were working with farmers. So let's say like in India, one was in India, and then they had some in like Latin America. And then they would sell some of their goods to companies like Pepsi and other big conglomerates. So
Okay.
they were trying to see like if they set up social businesses, right? Could they use that model as a way of developing countries or developing cities or region in a more sustainable way than if it's just a nonprofit?
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously with a nonprofit, there isn't an income that comes back in, right? Like the money goes, but there isn't revenue coming back.
Yeah.
So here was more like, we're giving you money to help you start your farm and everything. But the intent is that you're going to sell, and then with the profit, you can run on your own sustainably in the
Mm.
future.
Oh, it was very visionary because nowadays it's pretty much how it works now with
Yeah, but
social.
it has its challenges
Okay.
because when you work with big companies like that, they
Mm.
expect a certain level of output, right?
Okay.
And if you're like a smallholder farmer, you can't, and agriculture is so complicated, especially with like global warming and all of these things. You can't produce the quantities that they need
Yeah.
for them to consider it like a sustainable business model,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so it was hard. So the conclusion of that internship was I enjoyed it, it was good, but I don't think nonprofit is for me.
Mm.
I was like, I would rather just go work for a business. Like I would rather stay in corporate, but look for a company with a mission or a vision that I agree with.
Not
And
target.
yeah, and that where I feel like we're really changing the world, like
Mm-hmm.
so for example, I personally wouldn't work for like a tobacco company, or even though like I love wine, like I really felt conflicted about working for like alcohol companies because
Mm-hmm.
they would come and they would recruit at school, and then I'll be
Yeah.
like, yeah, but I know I can drink it on my own, but do I really want to sell that? So
Mm.
I was having like all of these moral dilemmas in my mind.
No, it's interesting.
Um,
Yeah.
and so during that whole reflection is where I
Mm.
came to the conclusion of like, okay, I want to work in tech.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was very early. So right after the internship,
Yeah.
it was set in your mind like you have to work in tech
Yeah.
and find innovative
Exactly.
opportunities.
But then what's interesting is that when you're in an MBA program, the way I approached it is I'm going to explore. I'm going to figure out everything, you know. So I did the nonprofit. I thought about going in education first. I thought before tech, I thought about going in education. So I did another internship while I was in school.
And still in New York?
Yeah, in New York. So
Okay,
I was going to school and I was doing an internship while in school. So it was like 2 jobs. And this one was really cool. So the concept, it was a partnership and with like Columbia Law School. And they brought together law students, MBA students, masters in public administration students, and engineers. And so it was like, let's take these 4 professions and kind of create like a think tank of how we can change the education system, you know, because it's like and then of course there were education students, like masters in education, people who were actually thinking of becoming teachers. And then they assigned us to different projects. And so my project was to work with a big news company to kind of develop mentorship programs between the school and their employees. You know how like companies, they have like these corporate initiatives of like, oh, let's volunteer, let's be involved in the community. So we were trying to figure out like, so how can the employees volunteer and serve in their community, and which students, like which schools should we target? What type of partnerships should we create between the schools and the employees? And we're targeting like underrepresented students. So like Black students, people from low-income families, all of that. But then once again, there was like a moment of conflict, because for mentorship to work, it needs to be a long-term relationship. You can't be like, oh, I'm coming and I'm spending 1 hour with you and that's it, I've mentored you. Like you need to build relationship, right? So as we're doing the research, and there was like a whole methodology behind it, the conclusion was we need to build a proper mentorship program. The employees need to commit like for 3 months minimum, or 6 months, and for like once a week or once a month, but at least see the students multiple times. Because especially with young students, like they don't trust you. Like when you have a conversation, they're not like, you know, an adult, we can have a 1 hour conversation or a 30-minute conversation, and okay, we're gonna get value from it. But children, no, you first need to gain their trust and build the relationship. Anyways, but the company was like, no, they didn't want to commit their employees. They were afraid that if they required such a long-term commitment, like a 3 months or 6 months, then they would lose the interest of the employees, you know?
Yeah.
So then that's when I was like, okay, this nonprofit thing is not for me. like I need to go find people who are motivated to make things happen. And then I was like, okay, fine, I'm staying in business.
Yeah,
but what do I do in business? Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so it's like, it's a bit of like feeling restricted basically by this model of nonprofit. You know, this a bit of utopian way of seeing of seeing things, maybe.
And it's like I really respect people. I mean, I think we need it, right? Like I think we need all different types of businesses. We definitely need nonprofits, don't hear me wrong. We definitely need like social enterprises, all of that.
For sure.
But for me, it's like you need to know yourself. And you need to know like in what environment will you work in and feel like happy, you know? And it kind of goes back to what I had said before. Like for me, if I want to work and I put in the work, then I want to see the results. Like I don't want the results to be dependent on someone else, you know? And I remember I took an entrepreneurship course, and one of my entrepreneur teacher was like, what's the point of a business, you know? And then people started saying saving the world, making change, developing a profit, like, And then he was like, no, the point of a business is to make money, you know? And everybody was so shocked, you know, like, what do you mean? You know? But he was like, if there is no money, there is no business, you know? Like, it doesn't work. You need the sales. If you don't have sales, then nothing. So whatever lives you think you're impacting, whatever people you think you're employing, like if you don't bring in revenue, none of that exists. So I was like, okay, I can do that, because at least it gives me, I need like a clear definition, you know? So it's like I know that if I work hard and if if like it's a good product, if the business model makes sense, then things are more likely to work out. Of course, there is always like the economy and outside factors that we cannot control, you know. But at least the business model is built for it to work in some ways, you know.
But it's very interesting that you're talking about knowing yourself, because and I don't know if you had this feeling back then when you were having these thoughts, because sometimes when we start like our careers, we feel like, you know, we just want to have a job, we want to go there wherever they accept you.
Yeah.
So did you felt like you were different from the other people around you that were at the same stage, or was it something really common in around at that time?
No, I definitely I take calculated risks.
Okay.
You know, like I don't like feeling stuck. Maybe that's because I always moved my whole life, you know. But the way I look at it is you spend most of your time at work, you know, like if you think about it, right? Like most of your time is spent at work. So for me, it makes no sense for me to stay in a job I don't enjoy, because that means that I am spending most of my time miserable. And I'm like, yo, this is not the life I signed up for.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying like quit your job tomorrow. I don't do that. I never do that. I never recommend that. But I'm always saying like try it out, you know. And I think that now I've been working for what, like 10 years, and I've done probably like 8 different jobs, you know, because I don't feel shame in trying something and then saying like, oh, I don't like this, and then going and trying something else. Like the job I have today, I'm going back to it. Like I did it and I was like, okay, this could work. And then I got bored. And then I went and I did 2 other jobs. And then I was like, oh, but you know what? I really like that other job. So
it's great because you're not, I mean, you're not afraid of you know, of being wrong and just you know, of
like,
changing your mind. It's fine.
Yeah, we have one life, right? So make it count, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to go back, so after, so at that moment you're like, okay, I want to go corporate all the way. It was that at that time that you left New York to come back to Canada, or
No,
or
so
was it
that
after?
happened still in New York. So
Okay.
yeah, so what I was saying earlier, so when you're in an MBA program, right? Like
Okay, yeah.
it works better if you go and you already know what you want to do, because companies are there recruiting and it's easier to help you with the networking, and you go straight, right? But me, I was in like exploration mode. So what happened was when I figured out like, oh, I actually want to work in tech, it was too late for tech recruiting. You know, like the big companies that hired, like, because I was an international student, the big companies that had like international students and all that jazz had already recruited.
Okay.
And I'm there like, man, like
too late.
what do I do? Like I messed up, you know. So I applied to a lot of jobs. Like I applied to jobs I didn't even want. Like once again, going back to what you were saying, right? Because I was just like, I just need a job at this point, you know. And I was like, I just need a job, and then we'll figure it out. Like I'll adapt, but I just need money. And it didn't work. Like I was there for like 6 months, and then in December 2016, I came back to Montreal. I was like, you know what? Let me go back to Montreal. I'm a PR in Montreal. Like I was a permanent resident. Because that's the other thing I hadn't really realized is I'm a bit impatient. So what would have been the smarter move would have been for me to wait until I was Canadian and then go to the US for my MBA, because then I would have been a Canadian and I would have had a different type of like student visa, which would have made it easier for me to work in the US or to come back to Canada. Anyways, I can always come back. But because I went under my Rwandan passport, then it made me an F1 student, which meant I had to get an H1B visa, which is really hard to get. Wow. So after a while, I was like, I'm going to cut my losses. I'm going home, you know? And I was devastated. Like, to be honest, I really was. I was like,
must have been really tough.
Like all that money I paid, and like I'm back to Montreal, you know, and I love Montreal, but that was not the plan. That was not it. And so I came back, and then I started looking for jobs again, and then that's when I first got my tech job at SAP.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how was the transition transition? How is it from going to, you know, non-profits, more social working to a more technical job, which I guess
It was very
was as
humbling. Yo,
okay.
oh, it was so humbling.
Tell us about that.
So when I first started, right? So if you go back, I had worked in retail, right? I had worked at
Yeah,
Target.
Target, yeah.
And I was doing, before when I was in college, I had worked in stores, like, you know, those student jobs. And then at Target, I was working, doing inventory, which made sense because I had worked in stores. So it kind of went together. So then when I got in tech, I applied at a role is called a solution consultant at SAP. But because I didn't have experience, I joined through their academy. So let me explain that. So in a software company, right, you have the sales team that sells the software, but then you have the solution consultant who is part of the sales team, and their job is to demonstrate what the software can do, you know.
Okay.
So they explain it so in a sales cycle, they will explain to the client, like, if it's HR software, like, oh, this is where you would put your employees, this is where you put their pay, things like that. Or you want to hire people, this is how you recruit, all of that things. This is how you onboard. So there's a job, a pre-sales job or solution consultant job to do that. And they were hiring somebody to do supply chain. So inventory management, warehouse management, supply chain stuff, which I had done. So that's how I got the job. But because it was an academy role, I was with like fresh grads. So, or like people who were at least 3-4 years younger than me. So here I am taking a beginner job basically, right? I just finished from like big shot NYU, you know, like I just had my MBA and like I'm supposed to be like going to like a huge role, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
And now I'm starting with like beginners, you know, like, well, kids were younger at the time, like kids were younger than 4 years younger than me, you know? Oh, and I'm there like, it's okay. Because one, I needed a job. But two, I understood that at the end of the day, it's me. I know I'm smart and I know I can turn things around. So I knew that if I did this job for 1 year, 2 years, I would figure it out and I would get a promotion and I would go do something else that was more equivalent to my work experience. You know, so, but it was definitely like my ego took a hit because in the academy, it's like a training and they're teaching us how to read financial statements and how to analyze a business, like basic stuff. At the back of my mind, I'm like, I've been doing this for the last 2 years. Like, I know how to do this, you know, but you can't be that asshole. you know, like you can't be that asshole that's like, I know how to do this, you know. You have to humble yourself.
Exactly. That's that was another challenge, I guess.
And then so there was that piece of like humbling yourself, you know. But then I was the only woman.
Wow.
Amongst like a bunch of guys, you know.
Okay.
And then I see the younger guys like getting acclimated easier than me, you know, because the other guys are like bringing them in, they're going out for drinks, they're doing this, they're doing that.
The boys' club.
It's a boys' club, and I'm just like, what is going on? Like, I'm the smartest one.
How tragic.
And I was killing it in my presentations. I was doing an amazing job, but I just didn't fit in, you know, like it was just awkward. Like I would go at, I will never forget, like we had like a team outing, like everybody, you know, and here I am, I'm like, okay, let's go make some friends, you know,
let's try.
And let's try. And then I go on a table, and obviously it's a table full of guys, okay? And then I sit down with them because I want to have a conversation, and I don't know whatever they were talking about, but when I sat down, everybody went quiet. And I'm just like, okay, I just ruined the party, you know? So it was definitely an adjustment, man.
So how long did it last, like this
role?
With the academy only? Yes,
so the academy is interesting. It was a 9 months? It was a 9 months program, but it was cool though. I would highly recommend it if you have like entry-level people in the chat. It was 6 months, and we spent 6 months in California. So it was like a class. It's basically a class. You had a class of people we had Canadians, we had people from the US and from other parts of the world. And it's just kind of like a boot camp. like boot camp of like, this is how you sell, this is how you present, these are the solutions, learn them, present them, you know. So it was intense. But of course, when you have so many young people, it's also fun, you know, like weekends. I really just felt like I went back to school, but part of me was ready to be done with school because I was like, I'm done with this, like, you know.
So you were counting the month.
Yeah,
6 to
exactly.
go,
Yeah.
5,
Yeah, so, but it was fun. It was a great experience for 6 months. I made some great friends, like even now that I talk to, like, who live abroad. And then you come back in the field, and then you start working with the salespeople, and you start like working deals and things like that, and you're kind of like integrated into the team.
Yeah. Did you like this part of the job, like the selling, the more unskilled part of the job?
I did. So I'm gonna say yes and no, because I'm back into it. So I mean, I must have liked it, but I did like it. I like this, and this is what I like about it. Like, I like the solving a problem piece. You know, like I like where we speak to the customer and the customer explains what they want, and then the math or the thinking behind it. It's like, oh, so what do we have that could fit? You know, like what can we pitch to them that solves this problem? Like that, I really enjoy. And then the pitching, like the presentations, I really enjoy. You kind of get like a adrenaline rush from it. So that part I enjoyed. The part that I find hard, and it's where it's important to kind of find a team you fit in, is the sales pressure, right? Because in the sales environment, there's a lot of sales. Like, you're driven by deadlines, you're driven by your quota, etc. So people can get intense. And so you have to be able to either defend yourself and tell people to like leave you, or you have to be able to kind of like let it go over you, and like it doesn't offend you, or you can just kind of let it go. And I wasn't ready for that. You know, me, I was here like all nice and smiley, and you know, like peace and love, you know. And I'm in a culture that's very like, no, you know, that's kind of like a little bit cutthroat. So I found that hard. I did it for 2 years, and I was like, no, I need to go do something else. Like, I need
but at least you did it for 2 years. That's a big achievement.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
And what was up for Michaella after that?
After that, I wanted a global role.
Okay.
So when I was a solutions consultant, I worked in Canada. So I was serving customers across Canada. So I would do Montreal mostly, Toronto, and then sometimes like Vancouver, sometimes Halifax. And then I was like, no, let me go do a global role. I want to understand what's happening. So I joined a team that they called an industry team for telecom. And it was a global team, and that was my favorite team.
Wow.
And so what we did, so when a company has so many solutions, right, you can sell anything. And so my whole job was to kind of look at, of all the solutions that we have, which ones are actually relevant for a specific industry. So for me, I was working with telcos, so like Bell, Rogers, like AT&T, Verizon, etc. So looking at all the portfolio of solutions we had, and then saying these are the ones we should pitch to them, the other ones are irrelevant. And so that team I really liked, because you kind of get like a higher perspective. But then it was diverse. Like, it was all guys again, but at least my boss was American. I had a French guy who lived in Australia, a Turkish guy who lived in Dubai, and a Chinese guy who like lived in the UK. You know,
another type of diversity then.
Exactly. So already the conversation changes completely, right? Like, the Turkish guy in Dubai, he was Muslim. So when it was Ramadan, like it's Ramadan now, right? Like, we would talk about it. We would like acknowledge all holidays. When it was like Lunar New Year, we would talk about it. You know, like it was sort of like, oh, we recognized that we were a different team, or that we were different people, and it was okay. You know, as opposed to when I was in the Montreal team, where I felt like, oh, I didn't grow up in Quebec, and I didn't grow up going to chalets, you know, and I don't do hockey and I don't ski. Like, I stood out, you know, like I was such like, like I didn't get it. I didn't get the conversations, and there was no
Interesting.
intention of like trying to fit me in, or and vice versa, you know. But whereas like in a global team, it's like, well, everybody's different and that's okay, you know.
Great, great.
Like we just take you kind of like as you are. So I really enjoyed that team, and I had a great manager. And this is actually important because a manager can make or break you. And this was kind of like the manager. He was like an older man, and he had 4 daughters, and I think maybe that's what saved me, because I think he could see me and like he'll be like, oh, I think I reminded him of his daughters in some way, you know.
That's
but he was
great.
like such a coach and like a cheerleader, you know. And he'd be like, no, of course you're smart, like. And then sometimes, you know, like women, and I will sometimes we doubt ourselves a lot, you know. Or you will say something and you'll be like, oh, but I'm not sure. Or you'll do something and then you'll apologize, and you'll be like, but why are you apologizing? You didn't do anything wrong, you know.
Great advice. Good
Yeah,
advice.
so I worked with him for 2 years, and I was like, I'm a boss, like I can do anything, you know.
But and also, is it at that time that you started to lead teams as well,
No,
or were you?
So actually, I was
now?
still like influencing, let's
Okay.
say.
Okay.
Because at the time then, when I was doing the global role, I was doing like North America, okay, Canada and the US. And I was still working with sales teams, but now it's like in an advisor role. So let's say if a salesperson is working on a telco, like a Telus or Bell or whatever, and they are trying to figure out like, how do I pitch to them? Then they would come to me, and I'll be like, this is how we usually pitch to telcos, and these are the materials that we use. These are what the other customers are doing. This is what's basically relevant. So that when they go have a conversation with them, they sound smart. Like they sound like they know what they're talking about, and they sound like they know the industry, right? But actually that brings you a good point, because then I kind of got bored. That's the theme. That's the theme of my life. I get bored. So I got bored.
I mean, it's good. The look where it gets you. So I can't. I mean,
yeah.
like you said, know yourself. That's
Yeah.
the point. Know yourself.
I got a little bored because I was like, but I'm not doing. I felt like I didn't have enough of an impact. You know, I was advising. I was advising sales on what to do, and if they wanted to do it, they would do it. If they didn't want to do it, they wouldn't do it. Then it's their choice, you know. And I was advising product managers what to do, and I was like, but they could do it, they could not do it, you know, and it was okay, you know. And I was like, but I really like my team, but I was like, but I'm bored, you know. And so now it's like, oh, do I stay for the team or do I go do something else, you know?
Big dilemma, yeah.
But then I can't. Like once I've come to that conclusion that I'm bored and now I'm starting to repeat the same thing over and over again, I'm like, no, we need to change. So then I was like, okay, do I go back to sales because I like it? But I wasn't ready to go back to the environment I was in. I was like, oh, do I change companies or do I try product management first? You know? And in tech, product management is big, right? Like you're either a product manager and you're producing the product, or you're in sales, you're selling the product. Like those are the 2 places to be. So I was like, let me try product management. So then that's what I tried. That was the next step.
Nice. And that was still at SAP or?
Still at SAP.
Okay.
And then at the time I was also pregnant. So that's the whole dilemma of being a woman. I was like, if I'm gonna make the change, I better make it now, because I need to know after mat leave what am I doing, you know?
Okay.
Because this is me. The safe thing to do would have been to stay in my job. I knew how to do the job, you know. The safe thing would have been to stay in my job, write it out during my pregnancy,
stay
go on
stable,
mat leave, and figure it out, you know. But I didn't want to go on mat leave with that question in my mind. I wanted to figure it out before going on mat leave.
Wow.
So I tried product management and I didn't like it. Once again, going back to what we're saying, knowing yourself, everything looked good on paper, but once I actually did the job, I was like, oh no, this is not for me, you know.
And what made you think like that precisely?
Product management is very long term, but once again, I think it depends on, I guess, on what tech company you're working on.
Okay.
Like what your solution is, right? But for us, like we're talking about roadmaps that are like 2 years, like a 1 year, 2 year roadmap, you know. Like I'm having a discussion today, but the discussion I'm having today is going to be on the roadmap in 3 years from now. you
Wow.
know.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
because
It's
the
very exciting
engineers
project.
today are already working, right? Like they already have a roadmap for this year that they're working on, and we've already decided on the features and the functionalities that they're working on. So even though I was speaking to customers, which is what I wanted, it was such a long-term view. So I was like, so the conversations I have today, it's 3 years from now that I'm going to see the results, you know.
Wow. That's, yeah. You have to be, yeah, it takes a lot of patience,
yeah.
and because sometimes, because you're saying 3 years, but sometimes it gets delayed, so it's even more, like you don't
Yeah,
even know. Yeah.
and you were prioritizing, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
exactly, no, like I could decide that something is important now, but 6 months from now, I decide, oh, something else is more important. So the idea we're talking about today, maybe it was 2 years, now it's 3 years. So you kind of need to have a certain long-term view and a certain level of patience that I don't have. And you also kind of need to really like the technology as well. You know, like you need to be ready to have those conversations about which feature you're going to implement. You know, for example, if you take Instagram, because we're all on Instagram, you know, someone has decided where to put this plus sign to create a story, right? And they've decided like, oh, when I'm whether I'm doing a boomerang or I'm recording myself, or like we're on the live right now, someone has thought about all of these little pluses and these little points, you know. And I was like, this is not me. Like, this is not, when you think about the conversation you want to have, I was like, this is not the conversation that I want to have, you know. And then I went on mat leave, and then I was like, okay, time to reset, you know. And on mat leave, you have a lot of time to think, you know. I mean, you're tired, but you have a lot of time to think, because it's you and a baby that doesn't speak to you and that doesn't interact until they're a certain age, you know. And so that's when I decided to change companies. When I was on mat leave, I was like, okay, I think we've done it. I think I'm ready. I'm ready for something new.
And then you waited for after the mat leave to make the move, or
no? So I got lucky. I got lucky. Well, I believe in like when opportunity. What's the saying? When opportunity meets preparation. Like yeah. So part luck, part preparation. So I was on mat leave, but I had already started telling people that I wanted to change jobs. So a few people in my circle knew, and then actually, like back in September or October or something like that, a friend of mine called me, and she's like, "Yo, there's a job in Ottawa. It's perfect for you. It's solutions consulting. You like being a solutions consultant. It's to lead the team. That they're growing. Like they're looking for someone bilingual. It's great for you. You should talk to the manager." So yeah, I'm on mat leave. I'm like, yo, I know I said I wanted to change jobs, but I'm not ready to change jobs. I had not worked on my resume. I had not worked on my LinkedIn. I was like, okay, you know.
Yeah, you were busy with the baby and everything.
My
so
baby was like, what, maybe 6 months then, you know.
Wow.
But I was bored. I found mat leave really hard personally, because I was so bored. Like I was like, I like thinking, I like talking about business ideas, I like brainstorming, I like having a team. And on mat leave, you don't really have any of that. So and this actually brings it, well, when we talk about Fadi, like that's kind of where the whole idea developed. But so when she said have the conversation and see where it goes, I was like, sure, I'll have the conversation. And then so I spoke to the manager, who's now my manager.
Okay.
And we're just kind of like, we're just kind of like checking each other out, you know, like an informational interview, you know. And I really liked him. Like I really bonded with him. I think I'm going to learn a lot from him. He's also worked for a while. He said he likes the book Multipliers, you know, which he's all about developing leaders and things like that. Okay. And I told him, I was like, you know, I'm on mat leave, right? So I'm not ready to come back to work. And he was like, yeah, it's fine. Like, do the interviews, and if you get the job, we'll push back the start date. So that's what we did. I did 10 interviews. Wow. Including a business panel, like where I had to kind of present like this is what I learned through all the different conversations, and this is the impact I think I can have, and this is what I'm gonna do. And then I got the job, and then I waited, and then I started like a month ago.
Wow. Congrats.
Thank you.
Like, great story. Very impressive.
Thank you so much.
Because again, like you followed your mind, but at the same time, like you said, some opportunities came. So it's a mix of great things plus the struggles of the beginning. And so it's awesome. But so now that you're in your new position,
Yes.
I know it's been only a month.
Yes.
But what would you say is looking back at your past experiences, what would you say helped you the most to get to where you are right now?
I think you have to be a curious person, and I think you have to take opportunities where you can. So, for example, it's my first time leading a team officially, right? But I've led teams before. I was that person in college doing the African Student Society, you know, like maths at McGill, doing like all of these different groups. Like when I was at SAP, I started with other coworkers, like the Black Employee Network at SAP, which led me to some very awkward conversations, right? Because like when you're pushing for DEI with like your leadership and people around you, while you're also kind of protecting your job.
Yeah,
it's people can hate you, you know. Like that prepares you for tough conversations, you know, and it teaches you like how to work with HR. It teaches you to understand how people are recruited. It teaches you to network with like senior leadership and things like that. So, and this is what I told people in my interviews. I was like, this job is a combination of everything I've done, you know, like I was a solutions consultant before I know the job. I did global go-to-market, so I know how to set up a territory, you know, like how to look at a territory, identify opportunities. I led like all these mini teams, so I can lead a team. I just need opportunity to do it, you know. And so it's kind of like the accumulation of everything. And I think that the only way, it's easy to say that now, right? Because hindsight's 2020. But I was never like, oh yeah, this is what I'm gonna do, and then this is what I'm gonna do, and this is what I'm gonna do. It was more like, no, let me do it, and then we'll figure it out, you know. And then learn. I think what I'm getting better at, and this comes with time, is kind of learning to trust myself, right? Like sort of how I did like the product manager role, and I was like, yeah, this is not it. Me 5 years ago would have been like, give it time, like, you're gonna get used to it, you know, like I wouldn't have trusted that first instinct of like, yo, maybe no, like, you know, like this is not for you. Yeah, but that comes with practice, with exercise.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, interesting. And how did the FIDE Studio project came along? Like when, at what point, and what I understand what you're doing with this initiative, but what was the purpose at the beginning for you to?
So interesting. So it started as a podcast, Jazz avec moi. It's still there. Like, and that podcast started out of frustration. So remember how I was telling you like earlier, like I didn't fit. Yeah. So I was feeling like very alone, you know, and I was like, there must be other people out there who like feel like me, you know, who are doing really great in whatever careers they have chosen. But they're like, what is going on in this world? So I was really feeling alone, and I just wanted to meet other cool people. So I just started interviewing people, and and just kind of was part reassuring myself, like this is my community, these are my people, even if we're not together in the same city necessarily or in the same space, but they are the people that look like me that do cool things.
Yeah, we have a platform.
And then part share their stories as well. But my jobs have always been demanding jobs, so I kind of burnt out a little bit because it takes a lot of work to produce a podcast. Yeah. And I didn't want to spend the money to like hire. I had already spent money hiring an editor, but I didn't want to spend money to I didn't want to invest more in it. So that was one reason I stopped. And then the second reason I stopped is that once I changed jobs and I liked my boss and I liked my team, then that anger that started the podcast wasn't there anymore, you know, because it was a podcast that started out of like, oh my God, I need to find people, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
and now
yeah.
life is great. Now life is good. So the motivation is gone, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so then it was like, okay, how can I find a healthier way of doing it? You know, because
Mm-hmm.
I was looking for a lifeline, but
Mm-hmm.
now it's okay. I don't need the lifeline anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I started thinking about that, and then I got married and I got a baby, so things got busy. So that was one. And then the other part was I realized with the podcast, I was interviewing a lot of people, but it was kind of transactional, you know, like
Okay.
I have an interview, we record a podcast, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to build the community. I wanted to keep talking to the people, to keep knowing how they're doing and all of that. And so I was missing that. So that's why I took a pause.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I was on mat leave, and I had explored before producing podcasts for other people. But then when I was on mat leave, I was bored, like I said, right? So I was like, gosh, that is something to do. I was even thinking about it. I was like, should I go back to work part-time? You
I
know?
even wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But and then that starts a whole other conversation because it's like part-time roles are not, at least where I was, they're not like, how do I say this in an appropriate way?
I mean, it's
they're not like um like big career roles, you know.
okay.
It's like you will do like a part-time role. You wouldn't get a part-time role for the level where I was, you know. I would have had to kind of do like a downgrade. So
Yeah.
then that's out of the question. Like I'm not gonna downgrade just to do a part-time role. So I was like, never mind.
Yeah, for progression, it's not the best.
Yeah, exactly. So then I was like, okay, let me do something for myself because I've always wanted to. So then I first started with like a small project with BBG Haile. She's Rwandi's, Ethiopian. She's like a coach, speaker. She's great. Producing podcasts for her. And then I was like, wait, I like this. I like this. I like this type of thing. I'm good at it. Like I enjoy it. And then it kind of grew. Like, and then I started kind of doing like PR work for her. And then I was like, oh, so I could do PR work for other people too. Like,
wow. Just like that.
Yeah, trial and error, right?
Mm-hmm.
But once again, kind of figuring out what is it that I enjoy. Like I tried social media. I was like, I don't like social media. But I've always been the person that tinkers, you know, like back in the days of Tumblr, I had a Tumblr page. I had like a website at one point doing like telling stories of like African people doing great things. I used to draw, I used to paint, like I'm a creative person as well. So I need to kind of find like that creative outlet. And so then I was like, okay, so that's the vision. And I've always been about the third culture kid, the concept of the third culture kid. Like, so a third culture is someone who grew up in a culture that is not their parents, you know. So like me, how I left Rwanda when I was 12, you know, and then I lived in all these other countries. So the way that I identify is very different from a Rwandan who grew up in Rwanda their whole life or until they were like 20 and then came here, right? Because they're going to be very rooted in their Rwandan identity. Whereas me, yes, I'm Rwandan, but I kind of also feel Pan-African in some ways. And I mean, I married a Ghanaian, you know, and then I also feel Canadian. So, you know, so there's also, and I'm going to be very different from a Rwandan who was born and raised in Canada, you know.
Exactly.
So I kind of wanted to explore that. And I felt like a podcast was too small to explore that. But if I created a company around that, then I can represent other people, like other clients, you know. So I still work with BBG and I'll have like 2 others clients where I'm like helping pitch them for like conferences and things like that. So it's cool. Like we're trying it out and then we'll see what it becomes.
But it's a big side hustle. It's a lot of work. It's how do you mix this with your current position as well as a manager?
So one, it's funny because I got this book called Rest is Resistance because I feel like I need to figure out how to rest properly, you know. But this type of things gives me energy, you know. but you have to pace yourself. So what I do in my side hustle is I outsource some of it. So like I have a VA that I work with, and then like some of the editing is also outsourced. So I don't do all of it, but I do most of it. And then I'm just learning how to set boundaries, you know. And then usually let's be honest, I do it at night, like after the baby sleeps, and then like Saturday mornings, that's what I do. But I enjoy it. Like once I stop enjoying it, then I probably will stop doing it, or or I'll find another way to like morph it into something else that works for me, you know.
Oh, but it's amazing. It's amazing that you still find a way. That's a great thing. And it's been how long since you started?
It's been like so the podcast I started in 2019.
Okay.
But I guess the company formally I started it in like last October.
Okay. So it's new.
Yeah, it's a
awesome
baby. It's my second baby.
Okay. So now it's a call for anyone who has a podcast project or anything, wants some advice.
Yes.
You know where to go. Michaella is there as well.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. So there's a question I like to ask to my guest. And it's a simple question, but it's a meaningful one, okay? Because I know, especially with your journey, your current projects, your mother as well, so you pretty much have 3, 4, 5 roles at the same time. And can you give us 3 content? So it could be books, could be songs, could be movies, whatever any content that you like and you would say represent you.
Oh, okay. Represent me. Interesting. So there's this podcast I'm really enjoying right now. It's called A Slight Change of Plan. And it's about change. It's about how you can plan the most perfect life and whatever. Or you can plan to lose weight, or you can set New Year's goals, and then life happens and it changes, right? It's by Dr. Maya Shankar. Yeah, and then so she studies like the psychology of change. It's really cool. She does interviews with other people. So A Slight Change of Plans. I've been listening to that, and it makes me feel better when I feel like I'm not following my plan, you know, because I'm like, there's a whole psychology behind it, you know. A book that I'm a huge nerd, if you have not realized by now. A book that really changed the way I approach life is called The Power of Habit.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah, I read it maybe like 10 years ago or something like that. And they break down how habits are formed, and they kind of explain the logic behind it with like examples and things like that. But it really changed the way I look at life, and it kind of made me realize like we are the result of our choices. So, for example, I used to be like super fit. Okay, I used to like run all like 5Ks all the time. At one point, I did like a 10K. I was super small, you know. And obviously, you give birth, and all of that goes to. And even before giving birth, let's not all blame it on the baby. There was the pandemic, and you know. But I always remember like it's a question of habit. You know, like I just need to reset. I just need to go back to it. I just need to be consistent. You know, like I've been back in the gym slowly but surely, and we'll get there again. You know, and so that book has helped me kind of look at life like, it's a question of habit. Like you can reset habits, you can start over, you can continue. Like nothing is set in stone, you know. And then the third piece of content, I really like music.
Yeah,
I think music like makes me happy in general. Like sometimes I used to do like dancing parties on Instagram for the people who follow me. I'm like dancing on like a Monday morning in my chair. Yeah, I just like music in general. I'm a huge like Zouk person because that's what I grew up hearing at home, you know. And like compa and things like that. But
awesome.
Those are the 3 pieces of content.
You have good taste. And for the music and also for Power of Habit, I think I saw a TED talk from the author at some point.
Yeah,
it was very insightful because to your point, it's something that we don't think about, especially when you age, you're an adult, and then you don't go to school and you want to learn. You know, you have to learn new tricks, and you don't set your mindset to it. Sometimes you need a little push. So yeah, very nice recommendation.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was and Sandra, I think I think you have some people who are participating to dance show, so it's amazing. Awesome, awesome.
Thank you.
Uh, Listen, Michaela, it was very great. I think the key takeaway from this discussion is know yourself. I think it's impressive that you know, you made all these risky moves, but at the end it paid off, because I mean it was for your well-being. It was for to attain your objectives. So
Yeah,
no regrets.
and I would say, and I would add,
Yeah.
like, be curious, you know, because it's
Mm,
not like I knew myself before. I
mm,
didn't.
mm,
Um, it's more like I was curious and I followed that curiosity, you know,
mm-hmm,
because I think that most times we think like, oh, but what if I did this? What if I did that? And then we
mm,
stay stuck there, you know,
yeah.
like you don't try it. Like I think we overanalyze um, the cost of what we might lose,
Mm-hmm,
but there is no way to predict what you can gain,
mm,
right?
yeah.
And so, but if you don't try, then you don't know. So then you might not know yourself, you know. So like just
Mm,
try it out and see it. You might
mm-hmm,
hate it or you might love it, you know. And
mm-hmm.
then through that, then you know yourself. And I'm sure the Michaela in 5 years from now is gonna be very different from
I
the
know,
Michaela who's
for sure,
speaking to you
and
today, right?
for sure. And I'm looking forward to having next discussions with you, either through another live or maybe when we meet again, because
For
it's very
sure.
interesting, and
Oh
even
my
for
God,
me as well. It's very inspiring.
thank you so much. And then you get to tell me your story. I should
Uh,
interview you. We should do the live of like who is Tony on RPN,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah. At some point, I'll tell a bit of my own. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But I really enjoyed this discussion.
Awesome.
Thank you for your time. I think everyone. I mean, Sandra says it the best. We love your energy. I think it was uh, I mean, I think we did almost an hour, but it felt like just 2 minutes listening to you.
Yeah,
It's
thank
almost hypnotizing. So very, thank you a lot. And like I said, to everyone listening to us through the live, or people who are gonna listen to us through the YouTube channel, Friday Studios. I'll put the link as well.
thank you.
There's great content, and again, if you have ideas, Michaela
Yeah,
is there to support. We have someone in the community and the network for such projects as well. So
let
thank
us know. Let us know.
ex-
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was a
it,
pleasure.
it was my pleasure as well. Have a good one. Take
Bye.
care.
Bye.